In 2016, Zachary Whitley fell victim to a fatal shooting during a robbery. His tragic demise left the community of Greenville County, South Carolina, in shock and sorrow. Then, 6 years later, the same residence became the site of another horrifying and violent crime when Charity Southerland met a similar end. These seemingly unrelated incidents remained dormant as cold cases on the surface. But persistent detective work would eventually lead to breakthroughs that would bring the culprits to justice years later. Greenville County, located in the northwestern part of South Carolina, is known for its small-town charm and a bustling downtown area. Despite its growth and development, certain neighborhoods in Greenville County still struggle with issues like poverty, crime, and reports of domestic violence. Zachary Whitley was a long-term resident of Greenville County. He was known for his friendly nature and his dedication to his family. Despite his warm personality, Zachary's life took a difficult turn that would lead him to become involved with people in the local criminal scene. He worked as a pool installer and landscaper, striving to provide for his family, which included a son and a daughter. Charity Southerland was a beloved member of the Greenville community, remembered for her kind and generous spirit. Undeterred by becoming a mother at a young age, Charity was determined to create a better life for her child. She was dedicated to her family and was known for her infectious smile and caring nature. Both Zachary Whitley and Charity Southerland had no idea that their lives would be brutally cut short under eerily similar circumstances in the same house. On a quiet Sunday afternoon in Pelzer, Greenville County, the peace of the day was shattered by a violent confrontation. On April 16, 2016, around 4 p.m., a dispute erupted into gunfire on 220 Eastview Road. Inside the home, Zachary Whitley, who was 31 at the time, found himself caught in a fatal crossfire. As chaos ensued, Zachary was struck by a single bullet to the chest. Despite the severe injury, pure adrenaline drove him to attempt to escape. He staggered out of the house, clutching his chest, but collapsed in the front yard before reaching his vehicle. He succumbed to his injuries before help could arrive. The scene inside the house was equally harrowing. 3 other individuals, Zachary's friends, were shot multiple times and left seriously injured. One victim was airlifted to Greenville Memorial Hospital, while the other 2 were transported by ambulance, all fighting for their lives. Witnesses described the suspects to the authorities, leading to the release of detailed descriptions. A group consisting of 3 males and a female getaway driver in a silver Toyota. The first suspect was described as a skinny black male in his early 20s. He wore jeans and a black cut-off t-shirt, standing at 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighing 120 to 130 pounds. The second male suspect had long blonde dreadlocks, wore a bright Bob Marley jacket, and stood at 5 feet 10 inches tall, weighing 160 to 170 pounds. The third male suspect was noted for his white attire and possibly dreadlocks, standing at 6 feet 1 inch tall. The female getaway driver was described as heavy-set with short hair. Even with these detailed descriptions, no immediate arrests were made. This left both law enforcement and the community eager for resolution and justice. While Zachary's loved ones were left to mourn his loss, investigators worked to piece together the events of that tragic day. As weeks turned into years, the intensity surrounding Zachary Whitley's case began to wane, and the once promising leads grew cold. Although law enforcement made exhaustive efforts, the elusive perpetrators seemed to vanish into thin air. Then, in 2022, amid the lingering sense of frustration left behind from Zachary's case, a chilling sense of déjà vu gripped Greenville County. A new tragedy cast a dark shadow over the community once more. On April 2, 2022, there was another tragic shooting at 220 Eastview Road, the same address where Zachary Whitley had been slain years earlier. In the early morning hours, 21-year-old Charity Southerland was fatally shot in her home. Charity's 3-year-old son was present at the crime scene, and she was found lifeless in her bedroom. The investigation into the violent crime was immediate. Law enforcement, driven by a commitment to bring justice to the grieving family, worked tirelessly to gather evidence and follow leads. This happened only months after her brother passed away in a fatal car crash. Progress in the case seemed to come to a standstill in the months following Charity's horrifying end. On April 2, 2023, her family and friends held a vigil at Herdklotz Park to bring attention to the case again. Her father, Linny, recalled her positive impact on those around her, saying, She was just such a good person. Everybody she encountered loved her character. She was just a lovable kind of a person, a likable kind of person. You wanted to be around her. On February 16, 2024, the Greenville County Sheriff's Office announced significant breakthroughs in the two cold cases during a press conference. Sheriff Hobart Lewis revealed that the investigations unit had solved both slayings of Charity Southerland in 2022 and Zachary Whitley in 2016. Despite being unrelated, both crimes occurred at the same property, 220 Eastview Road in Pelzer. The 2022 case saw new developments when the GCSO Cold Case Unit identified 22-year-old Charles Russell Reams as the suspect in Charity Southerland's crime. Although Reams, the father of her child, had been a person of interest from the beginning, initial evidence was insufficient for charges. Charity's demise was following what was believed to be an ongoing domestic-related issue inside her home. In January 2023, Reams was arrested in Rome, Georgia, on unrelated assault charges. He kidnapped a woman and hit her in the face with a gun, causing bruising, swelling, and a busted lip. He is also accused of attempting to strangle the victim. The investigators could then link DNA evidence and witness testimony to Reams. This led to warrants for his immediate arrest in January 2024 on charges in connection to Charity's fatal slaying and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. Reams remains in custody at the Floyd County Detention Center in Georgia without bond, pending extradition. In the 2016 case, the slaying of Zachary Whitley was attributed to 34-year-old John Wesley Nix. Authorities identified it as an illegal substance-related deal gone bad. Nix went to the home on Eastview Road to sell illegal substances and ultimately shot 4 people. Cold case investigators re-examined the case in 2022 after it had stalled. Utilizing improved DNA forensic technology and conducting follow-up interviews, investigators secured witness statements and DNA evidence that identified Nix as a shooter. The GCSO Fugitive Apprehension Specialized Investigations Team arrested Nix at his job on Wade Hampton Boulevard. Nix was charged with a violent crime as well as assault and battery, attempted robbery, possession of a weapon during a violent crime, and criminal conspiracy. He is currently in the Greenville County Detention Center without bond. The GCSO is still working to identify 2 other suspects involved in the incident. The recent breakthroughs in the cases of Charity Southerland and Zachary Whitley bring much-needed closure to their families after years of uncertainty and grief. Jessica Kemp, Charity's sister, said, "I am grateful for whoever the victim was in Georgia that had the courage to say something. I wish my sister had that same courage because she would probably still be here today." Her mom, Fema Hester, said she is thankful for the woman who came forward and helped put Reams behind bars. "I think if it was not for her doing what she did, it might have taken longer for investigators to find the evidence that they needed to get him. She is my angel." The family is working to obtain full custody of Charity's son, Raheem, following his father's arrest. The arrests of Charles Russell Reams and John Wesley Nix highlight the dedication of the Greenville County Sheriff's Office to finding justice for the victims. As the legal process continues, the community stands together in support of the victims' families, honoring Charity and Zachary's memories. In 1991, the seaside city of Ventura, California, was rocked by the brutal slaying of Danielle Clause, a beloved artist. It was a tragedy that would haunt the community for over 3 decades. Despite years of silence, advancements in forensic genealogy finally shed light on the decades-old mystery, bringing some closure to her family and the community. Born on July 24, 1948, Danielle Clause was a talented and sensitive artist, known for her evocative poetry and creative spirit. Despite battling significant personal challenges, including addiction, she made remarkable strides towards recovery. Danielle managed to turn her life around and then went on to dedicate herself to helping others facing similar issues. She worked at an adult school in Ventura, where she provided support and guidance to others dealing with addiction. Danielle was also an accomplished poet. She collaborated with her sister on a poem titled "Sheltered Heart." It poignantly depicted a bruised and bleeding heart attacked by cruel viciousness. This imagery would tragically echo the circumstances of her own demise. On the evening of July 15, 1991, Ventura, California experienced a night that would haunt the community for decades. Danielle, who was 42 years old at the time, was seen around 8 p.m. conversing with a man. This was at the corner of Hemlock Street and Thompson Boulevard. This would be the last time anyone would see Danielle alive. Danielle's husband reported her missing the next day when she failed to return home. On the morning of July 16, 1991, her partially clothed and beaten body was discovered on a hillside on Tioga Drive in a flood control catch basin, about a mile from where she was last seen. The discovery of her body sent shockwaves through the community and initiated a thorough investigation by the Ventura Police Department. The crime scene was grim. Danielle had suffered severe blunt force injuries to her head. An autopsy would later confirm that there was evidence indicating she had also been assaulted. Near her body, investigators found a blood-stained rock, believed to be the weapon used to take Danielle's life. Detectives meticulously collected evidence from the scene, including fingerprints, cigarette butts, trash, papers, and anything that seemed out of place or disturbed. But even with their thoroughness, the immediate investigation faced challenges. Witnesses described seeing a white pickup truck near the scene, but identifying the vehicle's owner proved difficult. Detectives canvassed the area and interviewed numerous individuals, but were unable to locate the suspect or gather enough leads to make an arrest. Their efforts were not enough to keep the investigation from hitting an end, and eventually the trail went cold. The physical evidence collected, including DNA from the assault kit, was not enough to identify a suspect with the technology available at the time. For more than 2 decades, Danielle's tragic demise remained unsolved. Her case file grew to over 1,000 pages as investigators documented every avenue explored and every lead followed. This would change in 2018 with the capture of the Golden State perpetrator, achieved through forensic genetic genealogy. This case would go on to revolutionize cold case investigations nationwide. Officer Tyler Buck, a new detective with the Ventura Police Department's Major Crimes Unit, dedicated several hours each week to cold cases. He had a particular interest in the potential of DNA technology to help solve them. He meticulously studied the 1,000-page case files, hoping to uncover overlooked details. Buck noted that the case's DNA sample had been entered into CODIS, but unfortunately, no matches were found. Buck then reached out to the crime scene investigations team and reviewed the evidence. He discovered that the weapon, a rock, and Danielle's fingernail clippings had never been tested for DNA. In May 2021, investigators decided to test these items to compare the DNA on the rock and fingernail clippings to the DNA from the assault kit. By September 2021, the results confirmed that all the DNA matched a single unknown suspect. Understanding the need for modern methods, the team pursued forensic genetic genealogy, a costly but effective technique. They reached out to multiple agencies for assistance. Senior forensic genealogist Misty Gillis from Identifinders International helped analyze the DNA sample. After building the genetic profile, it was uploaded to many genealogy databases. By July 2022, genealogists had constructed part of the suspect's family tree. In May 2023, they located a living family member interested in genealogy who had already built a family tree and provided a DNA sample. Analysis revealed she was a first cousin match and that she only had 2 male first cousins. This narrowed the suspects to 2 brothers, late Larry Devon Welsh and his brother who lived in Virginia. With only 1 brother alive, investigators faced challenges in obtaining a surreptitious DNA sample. By October 2023, a cold case assault unit further developed profiles on the Welsh brothers. Analysis revealed that Welsh had brown hair and hazel eyes. This matched the suspect's characteristics. His living brother had blonde hair and blue eyes. To confirm, Virginia State Police assisted by obtaining a DNA sample from the living brother. He provided information about Welsh's life. Testing confirmed he was not the suspect, but the full sibling of the suspect. Thus it was confirmed that the DNA from the crime scene belonged to Larry Welsh. Additional factors tied Welsh to the crime. He owned a white Ford Ranger and had a P.O. box in Ventura at the time of the slaying. He was seen with Danielle around the time she disappeared, and another witness had spotted him near the area where her body was found. Welsh, who was 41 years old at the time of the slaying, had passed away in 1999 due to an overdose. Identifying him brought a measure of closure to Danielle Clause's family. Her sister, Marcy Fort, expressed her gratitude for the dedication of the Ventura police and everyone involved in solving the case. She reflected on her sister's life and the long journey to justice. "My sister was so much more than a victim of a brutal crime. She was an artist, a daughter, a sister, a mother, and a wife. She was a good person with a mighty soul, and she was taken away too young." She remembered going to see her sister's body. She was so badly beaten that she was unrecognizable. I did not want my mother to see her like that. It was just devastating. Holidays. I always prayed that I would be able to know who did this. 33 years later, my prayers were answered. They did a phenomenal job, and I am so grateful that I lived to see at least a measure of justice. The resolution of Danielle's case is a testament to the persistence and innovation of the Ventura Police Department. Ventura Police Chief Darren Schindler said, "From the initial investigation in 1991 to recent advancements in forensic techniques, I am honored to highlight the perseverance of detectives as they continue to seek justice for the victim and her family. The successful end to Danielle Clause's case provides hope and a model for solving other cold cases." On a warm June night in 1984, Judith "Judy" Weaver walked home from her shift at the Bell Nest Cafe in Everett, Washington, never to be seen alive again. The next morning, her brutally slain body was discovered in her apartment, sparking a mystery that would haunt her loved ones for nearly 4 decades. Until a breakthrough in DNA technology led the police to a man with a dark past, reopening a case long thought unsolvable. Judy Weaver's life began in the close-knit community of Everett, Washington, where she was born and raised. Known for her warm smile and friendly demeanor, Judy was a beloved figure in her hometown. At the age of 17, Judy was crowned the queen of a local beauty pageant, evidence of her charm and grace. In 1984, she co-owned the Bell Nest Cafe on Hewitt Avenue with her mother, Edith Perrault. She worked tirelessly to support her family. The cafe was a local staple, and Judy's presence there added a personal touch that customers appreciated. She worked alongside her mother and her daughter, Kathy Myers, making the Bell Nest a true family business. Street smart and cautious, Judy was known to keep a gun in the basement of the cafe for protection when she counts the till. She was fiercely protective of her loved ones and ensured their safety was always a priority. As a single mother, Judy's family life was centered around her 2 daughters, Kathy Myers and Colleen Kaiser, who adored their mother and looked up to her as a role model. Judy looked forward to the future, anticipating the joy of watching her daughters grow and hoping to one day meet her future grandchildren. She met Levi, the oldest grandchild, when he was 4 months old. At his birth, "It's a boy," signs went up at the Bell Nest. Tragically, the trajectory of Judy's life and those that knew her would take a dark turn. On June 1, 1984, Judy spent her day working at the Bell Nest Cafe in downtown Everett, Washington. The city was buzzing with activity as the Salty Sea Days celebration, a popular local event, was winding down. As evening approached, Judy finished her shift and left the cafe, starting her usual walk home. The streets of Everett were likely filled with locals enjoying the final moments of the festivities. Judy made her usual stop at the Dairy Queen, just a half block from her apartment on Rucker Avenue. She probably ordered a dish of vanilla ice cream, a simple pleasure she often indulged in. A witness later reported seeing her there with a young man, someone they believed Judy might have known. This stop, which seemed mundane at the time, would mark the last time anyone saw Judy Weaver alive. Just after midnight on June 2nd, a passerby noticed smoke coming out of Judy's apartment. She stayed in an apartment in a 1-story, 5-unit brick building at the corner of 35th Street and Rucker Avenue. The passerby used a payphone to call 911, alerting the Everett Fire Department to the fire. When firefighters arrived, they were met with thick black smoke and a sense of urgency. As they entered Judy's apartment, they made a horrifying discovery. Judy was found in her bedroom, tied up with a phone cord, and the victim of a brutal assault. She had been strangled, and her clothes had been cut off with a knife. The fire, which was started with a paper towel in a Pond's cold cream jar, had been contained to the bedroom. But it was clear that its purpose was to cover up the assault and slaying. The back door of her apartment was unlocked, suggesting that the assailant had gained entry through it. Firefighters had to crawl into the smoke-filled bedroom to reach Judy, finding her lifeless body. The brutality of the crime shocked the community and devastated Judy's family. Her daughters, Kathy and Colleen, were thrust into a nightmare, grappling with the sudden and violent loss of their mother. News of the slaying spread quickly, casting a dark cloud over the city and signaling the start of a lengthy and challenging investigation. In the immediate aftermath of Judy's brutal slaying, the Everett police launched an intensive investigation to find her assailant. Detectives Gary Woodburn and Pete Grassi were among the first on the scene, working tirelessly to piece together what had happened. The crime was particularly heinous, and the fire, deliberately set to cover up the crime, had only partially succeeded. It left just enough evidence for detectives to understand the severity and brutality of the assault. Initially, investigators hoped that the forensic evidence gathered from the scene would lead them to the perpetrator. They collected samples from the apartment, including a piece of carpeting and a cigarette butt. The samples were sent to State Patrol crime analysts in hopes of finding a match in DNA databases, but the case began to stall almost immediately. The DNA samples did not match anyone in the existing databases, and the leads they had quickly dried up. Detectives re-interviewed witnesses and canvassed the area repeatedly, but no one could provide any substantial new information. The young man reportedly seen with Judy at the Dairy Queen was never identified, and no clear connection to anyone she knew surfaced. Although Judy was a well-known presence in the community, no one came forward with useful information that could lead to a suspect. Years passed, and the case went cold. In 2002, Pete Grassi, who had originally investigated the fire, revisited the evidence with the hope that advancements in forensic technology might provide new leads. The DNA from the carpeting and the cigarette butt were re-examined, producing a readable strand of DNA. The DNA did not match the prime suspect at the time, who was subsequently cleared. Once again, the DNA did not return a match in any law enforcement database, leaving investigators without a viable suspect. The frustration of the case going cold weighed heavily on the Everett police, particularly those who had been involved since the beginning. Grassi said in 2009, "There is nothing to do at this point." Detectives believed the case might never be solved unless a new tip came in or DNA technology advanced to the point where it could identify the perpetrator. As Judy's family lived with the pain of her unsolved slaying, her daughters remained hopeful and continued to push for answers. For nearly 4 decades, it remained a cold case hanging over the Everett community. But in 2024, a significant breakthrough was able to crack the case wide open. The breakthrough came thanks to advances in forensic technology and the determination of Everett detective Susan Logothetti. Earlier in the year, Logothetti and her team revisited the case files, focusing on DNA evidence that had been collected from the crime scene. Among the key pieces of evidence were DNA profiles found on pantyhose and a ligature used to bind Judy. These DNA samples had been run through CODIS, the national DNA database multiple times over the years without a match. But technology had advanced significantly since the original samples were collected, and detectives were hopeful that a new analysis might yield results. They then had a suspect, but needed a new DNA sample from him. Logothetti and other undercover officers posed as representatives from a gum company to determine the favorite flavors of participants in a study. The detectives collected multiple pieces of gum they saw the suspect chew in front of them in a ramekin, which was sent to compare with the DNA recovered from the victim. The DNA profiles matched a man named Mitchell Gaff, a 66-year-old with a lengthy history of predatory violence against women. Gaff had been living in Olympia, Washington, under the legally changed name of Sam Wise Price. He is a Level 3 offender, indicating a high risk to reoffend. His criminal history was both extensive and violent, with his past convictions showing a trend of him tying women up and then assaulting them. After confirming the match, Everett police acted quickly. They located Gaff in Olympia and arrested him on May 1, 2024. He was booked into the Snohomish County Jail on multiple charges: first-degree assault, first-degree arson, first-degree kidnapping, first-degree burglary, and ultimately charged with taking the life of Judy Weaver. Gaff, who had a history of evading justice through legal name changes and moving to different areas, invoked his right to remain silent when detectives tried to interview him. Even with his refusal to speak, the DNA evidence provided a strong link, solidifying the case against him. The breakthrough in Judy's case highlighted the importance of advances in forensic science and the commitment of law enforcement to solve even the coldest cases. After nearly 40 years, the arrest of Mitchell Gaff brought a measure of resolution to a community and a family that had been waiting far too long for answers. For Judy's family, the arrest brought a mix of emotions. While it could never bring Judy back, the possibility of justice provided a sense of closure they had long sought after. Judy's daughter, Kathy Myers, had said years earlier, "It's not going to bring Mom back, but it is going to be closure." On Monday, May 6, 2024, Gaff appeared in Snohomish County courtroom. He pleaded not guilty to the charges. He is being held on no bail. His trial is scheduled to begin on June 21st. If convicted as charged, Gaff will receive a life sentence. During the times of World War II, Mary Jane Vangilder made a decision that would lead to a decades-long mystery. She left her life in West Virginia, including her husband and 5 children, to seek new opportunities at an Air Force depot in Ohio. However, Mary Jane's story took an unexpected turn when she suddenly resigned from her position in March 1945 and subsequently disappeared. Her story would only be discovered almost 8 decades later. On November 19, 1911, Mary Jane Croft became the 4th of 8 children of John and Anna Croft of Montana. When she was 17, she married James Wesley Vangilder on January 29, 1929. By the time World War II broke out, Mary Jane gave birth to their 5th child after twins were stillborn in 1935. However, 2 years after the birth of Mary Jane and James's youngest child, Cheryl Judy Gay Vangilder, something happened in their marriage. Mary Jane then moved off the Vangilder family farm. She separated from James and her children and rented an apartment in downtown Fairmont, above the old Fairmont Theater. She then started working in Fairmont, West Virginia. In 1944, Mary Jane Vangilder moved from Fairmont to Huron County, Ohio, leaving her husband James and their 5 children behind. She took a civilian job at the Wilkins Air Force Depot, 7 miles from Plymouth in Shelby, Ohio. During this period of estrangement from her family, Mary Jane would purchase war bonds at different branches of the People's Bank in the Shelby area. She then would have them mailed to her oldest child, Anna Mae. Anna Mae said, "She sent me war bonds, and then she wrote me and asked me to mail the war bonds back to her, which she then went on to cash at different banks in Ohio." Anna Mae said her mother would also send her clothes at times. Despite these mysterious communications from her mother, she still had questions about her parents' separation and began wanting answers. In January 1945, Mary Jane requested all the bonds be sent back to her. It was the last contact she had with anyone from her family. Court records show that she filed for divorce in Ohio on February 12, 1945. She resigned from her job less than a month later, on March 8, 1945, stating she needed to leave because of added household duties. Mary Jane's divorce petition was withdrawn by her attorney in April 1946 after she failed to show up to court. But by that time, James Vangilder had already been granted a divorce by a judge in West Virginia. In 1946, James remarried, where he continued to raise his and Mary Jane's children. James passed away in 1985. Mary Jane was never officially reported missing at the time of her disappearance, but over the years her loved ones made several attempts to find her. It was not until Mary Jane's brother Lester Croft returned stateside from World War II that Anna Mae began earnestly searching for her mother. Lester went to the sheriff of Marion County, and he wrote letters to the police chief in Plymouth, Ohio. The decades would go by with them trading letters on through the 1960s, but they would only find a link to their mother's past in 2004. After a story ran in a Plymouth newspaper in December 2004, one of her granddaughters received a letter the next month from William King. He said that he worked with Mary Jane at the depot in Ohio, but lost touch with her when the business went through layoffs. The family's search would languish from 2004 until 2018. In October 2018, the Shelby Police Department received a Facebook message from Mindy Wilson, one of Mary Jane's granddaughters. Police Chief Lance Combs assigned the case to Detective Adam Turner. He spent years combing through cases of unidentified descendants in Ohio and throughout the country to see if any matched Mary Jane's description. During the course of his investigation, he came across a newspaper article about a Jane Doe found in Preble County, Ohio in the 1960s. The description of the woman's remains sounded like a possible match to Mary Jane. The remains were exhumed in late 2019 and taken to a state crime lab. Turner said, "They told me that they were able to do some DNA testing, and the body was not Mary Jane Vangilder. The story could have ended here." Turner said, "I could have easily just said, 'I am done. This is not mine anymore. This is Preble County's.' But he decided to press on, partnering with Moxie Forensic Investigations to develop a DNA profile and use investigative genetic genealogy to crack the case. It took 3 years, some delays due to the pandemic, before they learned Preble County Jane Doe was not a woman after all. The DNA matched to the closest relative to the human remains, a great-niece, Tina Barrett of Cincinnati. Tina had uploaded her DNA profile to GED Match, a public genealogy database where users can opt in to share their information with law enforcement. The human remains belonged to Albert Frost, a man from Hamilton, Ohio, who went missing sometime in the early 1960s. So why did the coroner believe Albert was a woman when his body was found in May 1968? His remains were badly decomposed and spread out over about 75 feet. Albert was also very thin and short, so Turner thinks that may have led to the mistake. The coroner was not able to determine the cause of demise. Turner said, "The rumor from some of his surviving family members, his nieces and nephews, were that Albert was beaten to his end outside of a bar in Eaton, Ohio." When Turner reached out to Tina, he unlocked another mystery. Tina said the following: "Initially, I thought they were talking about my great-aunt Clara, because until that moment, I did not know that Albert existed. No one talked about it." It turns out there were two missing siblings in the same family. Albert had a sister named Clara, who also disappeared and was never seen again. She went by the nickname Inez and was in her early 20s when she went missing about a decade before Albert, in the 1950s. The young mother was living in Cleveland, Ohio at the time of her disappearance. Several family members told Turner that Clara's mother sold her to a man who later became her husband. They had 2 kids together, who were just a baby and a toddler when she vanished. Clara's family thought her disappearance was suspicious and told police her husband had been physically abusive to her. At the time, Clara's husband told police she had just run off. Tina said she was not the type of person who would just get up and leave. Turner discovered that her husband had remarried by about 1952 and moved the children to Pennsylvania. Based on information from her family, Clara's husband, who passed away decades ago, is now a suspect in this case. The investigation into Mary Jane's disappearance was again an unsolved cold case. Turner caught a break in the cold case when he obtained Mary Jane's military personnel file and published it online. A civilian sleuth, as Turner calls her, had been following the case. In November of 2023, the woman came across the name Percy L. Sebrin. They then investigated this person and found that he had also worked at the Wilkins Air Force Depot in Ohio, like Mary Jane. Employee records show that she was promoted to high-lift fork operator in February 1945, a few days after filing for a divorce. She took the position from Percy and likely received training from him. Turner said the following on this breakthrough: "This name was among dozens of others located throughout Mary Jane's military file, but it would be this one alone that would prove crucial. Percy passed away in 1969 in Kansas City, Missouri. He was run over by a train." But Turner was able to locate his records and found he had been married to a woman named Mary Jane Sebrin. She had the same birth date as Mary Jane Vangilder and passed away in 1990. The couple lived in Arkansas and had 2 children, including a son named Percy Jr., who was born in December 1945. This is 9 months after Mary Jane left her job at the Wilkins Air Force Depot. Turner reached out to one of Percy Jr.'s children on Facebook, Bobby Sebrin, and she told him she did not know much about her grandmother's life and that it was not discussed. Turner said that Bobby and her siblings sent him photographs of their grandmother, clearly showing that Mary Jane Sebrin was indeed Mary Jane Vangilder. He also compared their signatures. There were distinct similarities in how each letter was shaped and formatted. A DNA test done in 2024 made it official. Mary Jane Sebrin was, without a doubt, Mary Jane Vangilder. Mary Jane Sebrin had somehow obtained and was using a different Social Security number than the one that was found in her military personnel file. Mary Jane passed away on May 31, 1990, of colon cancer and was buried alongside her husband Percy in his home state of Louisiana. According to her grandchildren, the Sebrins, Mary Jane was the perfect grandmother and they described her as incredible. She loved to garden, and her favorite flower was the hydrangea. She liked sun tea, and she was a great cook. When Mary Jane was very sick, Turner said she told one of her granddaughters that there was something she could not tell her, and that she could never find out. He said her granddaughter just assumed that her grandmother was just talking gibberish, but now it all makes sense. Turner said finding out what really happened to Mary Jane has been very painful for the Vangilder children and grandchildren, who spent decades searching for her. Mindy Wilson, who never got the chance to meet her grandmother, said she was very thankful to be able to deliver the news to Mary Jane's surviving children. Mindy said, "This has been a long time coming and a long journey, but our family finally has closure. This journey of searching for our grandmother started many years ago, before I was even born." Turner said the Sebring grandchildren have also been experiencing the gamut of emotions because their grandmother never told them who she really was and misled them about her past. He also added that what is unknown and what will probably never be known is why Mary Jane decided to leave her family behind in West Virginia and start a new life elsewhere. A family who loved her, cared for her, and missed her for 79 years. What it shows is that our decisions can reverberate through time and distance and affect generations of our immediate family and descendants. Our choices in life need to be made in the consideration of how it will affect those who love us. It turns out Mary Jane had a second secret life and family. Neither family knew about the other. The mystery of Mary Jane Vangilder's disappearance was not one of foul play, but rather a tale of reinvention. She chose to leave her past behind and start afresh, a decision that remained undiscovered until Detective Turner's persistent investigation brought closure to a family's long-standing search. In November 1986, the community of Garland, Texas was changed for the worst. Barbara Faye Villarreal's lifeless body was found by her husband. After thorough investigations, there were no leads and the case went cold. It would be more than 3 decades before an arrest was made in the case, and it was someone Barbara knew well. Barbara Faye Villarreal was part of a big but tight-knit family and grew up in the Indiana countryside. She had a simple and happy childhood, riding bicycles to her grandparents' corner shop for lollies and swimming in the nearby lake. A close friend describes her as a faultless, smart, sweet, and kind person. She was the youngest of 4 children from her mother's marriage with her father, who passed away when she was just a few years old. Her mother remarried and had 2 more kids. Barbara spent most Sundays and every holiday with her extended family that included loads of cousins. She liked to share recipes with her family and spend time with her Pomeranian called Cammy. On November 7, 1986, officers of the Garland Police Department responded to a disturbance call at a home in the 3600 block of Colbath Street. When they arrived, they found the lifeless body of 27-year-old Barbara Faye Villarreal in a back room of her home. Her life was taken by multiple stab wounds. Officers said that a large kitchen knife was found near her body. Her 32-year-old husband, Domingo Diaz Villarreal, was arrested on investigative charges of slaying that night. The police then interviewed him and eventually cleared him as a suspect in the case. He told neighbors that he had found her body and asked them to call 911 because there was something wrong with his wife. DNA evidence was recovered from the scene and was entered into the CODIS database. In 1988, 2 years later, her husband lost his life after a shootout in Mexico. The detectives then discovered that his real name was actually Jesus Canales. Throughout the years, the FBI and Garland police detectives worked several leads in both the United States and Mexico, but the case remained cold for decades. In 2023, Garland Police Department used new technology, including DNA genealogy, to determine the suspect. The DNA collected from the scene matched to the DNA of 85-year-old Liborio Canales, the brother of Barbara's husband. One of Canales' family members had DNA in a public database. Lovington Police Department in New Mexico said Canales was known to stay at a home in the city. The department said Canales had recently crossed the Mexico border and entered New Mexico to celebrate his birthday with family. Lovington PD took Canales into custody on July 18, 2023, without incident. He was then booked into the Lea County Detention Center on a federal warrant on the charge of taking the life of someone. While in custody, detectives said Canales admitted to slaying Barbara over a family dispute. His bond has been set at $1 million. Court records show Canales was extradited back to Texas and booked into the Dallas County Jail on August 18th. The police department said in a statement, "The Garland Police Department is thankful for the assistance of the Dallas FBI Violent Crimes Task Force, the Lea County Sheriff's Office, and the Lovington, New Mexico Police Department for help bringing closure on this cold case and closure for Barbara Fay's family." Her family can now finally understand the events that led to Barbara's untimely end and begin the process of healing. The case of Barbara Villarreal is a poignant reminder of the complexities of family dynamics and the enduring impact of unresolved tragedies. It also highlights the importance of perseverance in the pursuit of justice, no matter how much time has passed. Barbara's memory is honored not only by the resolution of her case, but also by the love and remembrance of those she left behind. On March 12, 2024, Canales was sentenced to 20 years in a Texas prison. Right before Canales was taken away, Barbara's family sent a strong message stating they will never let him occupy their thoughts again, and the life he lived should be considered a gift. Barbara's sister-in-law, Jennifer Dunderman, told Canales inside the courtroom that, "You spent 37 years living your life as if nothing had happened. You did not just take the life of Barb, you took a little piece of everyone she knew." Barbara's brother, Mark Dunderman, said the following, "It does not really change anything, though. We still do not have our sister, but it is nice to have closure." Dallas County lead prosecutor Leighton D'Antoni said, "They may have done some ungodly acts in their lives. They know they are meeting their maker sooner than later. I do think that helps people to accept responsibility and plead guilty." Barbara's mother is 93 years old and is still alive. It was very important to her that she lived to see the day to see someone convicted for taking the life of her daughter. What drives a seemingly ordinary person to commit an unspeakable act of violence? How can a community reconcile with the brutal loss of one of its own? These questions lie at the heart of the harrowing story of Dorothy Thomas, a beloved 27-year-old employee at New Way Cleaners in Tallahassee, Florida, during the 1950s. Her life was tragically cut short in a shocking case that has perplexed investigators and haunted the local community for decades. Dorothy Thomas, a pretty 27-year-old brunette, was identified as a beautiful, kind, and hard-working woman. She was well regarded in her community and known for her gentle demeanor and dedication. However, Dorothy's life took an unexpected turn on September 6, 1957. She was discovered in the bathroom of the dry cleaners by Coca-Cola delivery man Clarence Rames at 9:04 a.m. Clarence found the building empty and upon further inspection saw Dorothy's legs through the open bathroom door. Initially thinking she had fainted, he soon realized she was lying in a pool of blood. An autopsy revealed Dorothy had over 20 stab wounds to her head and neck, causing fatal blood loss. The investigation initially focused on Kenneth Thomas, her husband. His alibi, confirmed by multiple independent witnesses, detailed his whereabouts on the morning of the slaying. Harry Barth became a primary suspect when his dry cleaning was found on the counter at the dry cleaners. The cleaner's master log showed Barth's name crossed out, indicating he had already picked up his clothes. The cash register was open, with no cash missing, suggesting Dorothy was in the middle of a transaction when she was attacked. Drag marks led from the front counter to the bathroom, and footprints were found in the mud at the rear of the business. When officers first tried to interview Harry Barth, he claimed he could not get out of bed due to a severe headache. They noticed a pair of white shoes with mud on them under his bed, but when they returned several days later, the shoes were gone, and Barth denied ever owning them. Barth provided an alibi for the morning of September 6, 1957, and explained that his fingerprints might be found in the bathroom because he had used it the previous day. During his interviews, Barth made several incriminating statements, including that he might have taken Dorothy's life, and that he often experiences blackouts or loses his temper due to severe headaches. He asked the police to not involve his wife, and suggested he might confess. Witnesses could not confirm Barth's alibi. The babysitter revealed that Barth asked her to lie about the time he picked up his child, indicating an attempt to mislead the investigation. Despite the lack of conclusive evidence directly linking Barth to the crime, he remained the primary suspect. In July 1974, Barth was investigated by the Lincoln Police Department in Nebraska. This was after being identified as being with a woman, Blanche Klaus, shortly before she drowned and lost her life. Although Barth denied involvement, substantial circumstantial evidence suggested otherwise. In 1997, the FBI assisted the Tallahassee Police Department, TPD, in further investigations. Unfortunately, no definitive evidence was found to conclusively link Barth to either crime. In 1999, Senior Assistant State Attorney Robert Cummings drafted a memorandum to Chief Assistant State Attorney Warren Goodwin regarding the case and Harry Barth's involvement. Cummings recommended closing the case, stating that without a full confession, the case could not be prosecuted. Also, searching for witnesses to events from September 6, 1957 would be futile. However, Chief ASA Goodwin insisted that the case remain open until the primary suspect's demise. Recent investigations have confirmed that Harry Barth passed away on October 23, 2019 from thyroid cancer in Cary, North Carolina. He was a longtime chemist for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, who was in charge of food safety and quality control. This information was verified through his certificate and an interview with his daughter, Lynn Fisher. A subsequent review of the case by the task force led detectives to establish probable cause, indicating that Barth was responsible for the demise of Dorothy. Considering the available evidence, the previous recommendation by Chief ASA Goodwin, and Barth's demise in 2019, it is now appropriate to close the case. The tragic demise of Dorothy Thomas has haunted her community for decades. Despite exhaustive investigations, justice was never served. With the demise of primary suspect Harry Barth in 2019, the case was announced as officially closed in 2024. Dorothy will be remembered for her kindness and dedication, a light dimmed too soon but never forgotten. When TPD finally closed the case, Detective Mark Ray then made 2 opposite phone calls. He got to call Dorothy's great-nephew, who lives out of state, and tell him his aunt's case was closed. He said the phone call was relieving. Anytime you can provide some closure is good. He also called Barth's daughter, who responded more in disbelief. He offered her the opportunity to call back with questions, but he has not heard back. I am hoping that family heals as best they can with the news that we provided. Caroline Glachan was born in Derry, Northern Ireland, to loving parents William and Margaret Glachan. After 5 miscarriages, her parents cherished her deeply as their only child. Her parents' unwavering affection and support shaped Caroline's childhood, creating a nurturing environment filled with love and care. Seeking better opportunities and a close-knit community, the family relocated to Bondhill in Scotland, a quaint town known for its picturesque landscapes and welcoming residents. In Bondhill, Caroline blossomed into a bright and cheerful young girl. She attended Our Lady and St. Patrick High School in Dumbarton, where she was known for her friendliness, academic diligence, and enthusiasm in extracurricular activities. Unfortunately, her parents divorced when Caroline was only 7 years old. This was very traumatic for Caroline, as she had to stay with her mother because her father was a soldier. She adored her father and would rather have wanted to be with him. By August 1996, Caroline was a 4th-year pupil, making her way through the challenges and experiences of adolescence. She was a 14-year-old girl who had dreams and aspirations, like many girls her age, and a future that seemed full of promise. On the night of August 24, 1996, Caroline invited her best friend Joanne Menzies for a sleepover while her mother was out celebrating her 40th birthday. They walked outside, past the Ladyton shops, at 23:45 p.m., when Caroline said she intends to meet her boyfriend, Robert O'Brien, at a bridge. Despite her best friend's warnings to avoid the rendezvous, she went, and Joanne went back to Caroline's house. Robert was 18 years old at the time, but despite her mother's reservations about the age gap, Caroline was infatuated with him. The relationship started that summer, and the couple attended the Oasis concert at Balloch Castle County Park just 3 weeks before. This meeting, meant to be a brief encounter typical of young love, would tragically become Caroline's last. Her chosen path led her to Dilchip Bridge, a well-known shortcut she often used. The bridge connected to the river towpath, offering a quicker, though more secluded route. Sadly, Caroline never reached her destination. The next day, her partially clothed body was discovered in the River Leven, near the place of Bondhill in Renton, by a passerby. The picturesque river had become the scene of a horrifying tragedy. As investigators delved into the circumstances of her demise, it became clear she had suffered severe injuries. Extensive blunt force trauma to her scalp, face, and neck had resulted in her being unconscious. News of her brutal slaying sent shockwaves through the close-knit community, plunging her family and friends into profound grief and despair. Law enforcement officials launched an immediate and thorough investigation, seeking to unravel the mystery of that fateful night. The serene riverbanks and quiet pathways turned into sites of intense scrutiny as detectives combed for evidence and solicited information from the public. The day Caroline's body was discovered by the police was tragically her mother's 40th birthday. This cruel twist of fate deepened the family's anguish, as what should have been a day of celebration turned into one of unimaginable sorrow. A pathologist determined that Caroline had sustained 10 significant blows to the head, which had rendered her unconscious before she was submerged in the river. Further investigation revealed that a group of teenagers had viciously attacked her, subjecting her to verbal abuse and repeatedly kicking and punching her head and body with a blunt object. In 1996, this group's 4 individuals' names were widely circulated in the village, but there was never enough evidence to arrest and charge them. The main reason was that they all rigidly stuck to the same alibi and told officers they spent the night in an apartment in Allen Crescent. Although the assault was brutal, the ultimate cause of demise was determined to be drowning. The community was shattered by the senseless loss of such a young life. On February 26, 1997, Caroline's funeral was held in Alexandria, drawing mourners from across the region. Friends, family, and community members gathered to pay their respects and say their final goodbyes. The service was a poignant reminder of the young life that had been so violently taken, leaving behind a void that could never be filled. The grief was palpable, but so too was the resolve to remember Caroline and seek justice for her untimely demise. Despite the launch of an extensive investigation, the case remained unsolved for years, leaving the community in a state of ongoing grief and uncertainty. It was not until June 2019, when Police Scotland's major investigation team re-examined the case, that new hope emerged for solving the mystery. The renewed investigation involved re-interviewing residents of Allen Crescent. This is where Robert O'Brien, along with Andrew Kelly, Sarah Jane O'Neill, and Donna Brand had claimed to spend the night of Caroline's demise. A critical breakthrough came from an upstairs neighbor, Linda Dorian, who revealed she had seen 4 people leave the house with 2 small children. The group walked down Allen Crescent and crossed Main Street, which connects Renton to Alexandria, and then went toward the River Leven. This contradicted earlier accounts and added significant new details to the timeline of events. On the night in question, Andrew and Sarah were babysitting 2 young boys, Archie Wilson, aged 4, and his baby brother Jamie. They were later joined by Robert O'Brien and his pregnant girlfriend Donna. The group, including the young children, left the apartment together. When they returned more than an hour later, Linda heard a loud commotion and an argument. She heard one of them say something along the lines of, "That was not meant to happen. That went too far. How is this going to look?" It suggested that something significant had occurred during their absence. The new information aligned with the account given by 4-year-old Archie Wilson the day after Caroline's life was taken. Archie had told his mother Betty that he had been near the river and witnessed a fight, during which Caroline fell into the water. At the time, his statement seemed unclear and was difficult to act upon. Once Caroline's body was found, there were all these rumors, so they thought Archie had picked up on those. However, with the neighbors corroborating testimony, Archie's innocent observations became a vital piece of evidence. The reinvestigation brought a renewed sense of urgency and hope to Caroline's case. Detectives worked meticulously to piece together the events of that tragic night, aiming to bring justice to Caroline and closure to her grieving family and community. This breakthrough marked a significant step forward in the decades-long quest to solve the brutal demise of a young girl whose life was tragically cut short. In November 2021, 3 individuals were charged with her slaying: Robert O'Brien, aged 45, Andrew Kelly, aged 44, and Donna Marie Brand, also aged 44. Sarah Jane O'Neill, who had also been implicated in the case, had passed away before she could be charged. The trial commenced in November 2023 at the High Court in Glasgow, drawing widespread attention and reopening old wounds for the community and Caroline's loved ones. Archie was never the same after what he witnessed. Now in his early 30s, he was deemed unfit to give evidence during the trial. Caroline's childhood friend, Joanne Menzies, 42, told the court O'Brien had threatened to take the life of Caroline for kissing another boy, and that she had seen him bully her on more than one occasion. On December 14, 2023, O'Brien, Kelly, and Brand were found guilty of taking Caroline's life. The verdict was delivered at the High Court in Glasgow, concluding a case that had haunted investigators and the community for decades. Notably, all three convicted individuals had been teenagers at the time of the crime. The community asked why this evidence was not gathered in 1996. Detective Inspector Granger said it appeared that the relevant questions were simply not asked. He said another obstacle was that in the late 1990s, illegal substances were rife in Renton and the surrounding area, and several potential witnesses were criminals themselves who lived chaotic lives. Caroline's teenage perpetrators were all illegal substance users who shoplifted to fund their habits. In January 2024, the sentencing phase brought some measure of closure. Passing sentence, Lord Braid said, "You have taken a daughter from a loving mother." Miss McKeach has spoken of the pain that Caroline's demise has caused, the void her demise has left that will never be filled. She has been deprived of seeing the woman that Caroline would have become. No sentence that I pass could possibly make up for what she has lost. O'Brien and Kelly were both sentenced to life imprisonment. O'Brien was given a minimum term of 22 years before he would be eligible for parole. In the years following the slaying, O'Brien went on to have the child with Brand, and he was jailed for attempted murder and a serious assault. He was the main perpetrator in this case, as he inflicted the harm on Caroline. Kelly was set to serve a minimum of 18 years. Brand was unfit to attend court and was only sentenced on April 22 to a minimum of 17 years imprisonment via video call. The sentencing marked a pivotal moment for Caroline's family and friends, most especially her father and mother Margaret McKeach. She had the following to say: "This is the day that I have been waiting for 27 years." And she added, "It is not going to bring Caroline back, but it is justice for her. I do not know if closure is the right word, but justice has certainly been done." The community of Bonhill, still marked by the tragedy, found some solace in the resolution of a case that had deeply affected them for so long. The convictions and sentences served as a reminder of the persistence and dedication of law enforcement in seeking justice, no matter how much time has passed. Though the pain of her loss endures, this resolution honors Caroline's memory and highlights the relentless pursuit of justice. Both O'Brien and Kelly have launched a bid for freedom after the sentencing and intend to appeal their convictions and life sentences. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if a promising future was snatched away in a blink of an eye? What if justice seemed out of reach for over 2 decades? Tara Louise Baker was a 23-year-old first-year law student at the University of Georgia, poised for a bright and impactful future. Known for her intelligence and determination, Tara had always been a standout student. She graduated from Lovejoy High School in 1995, where she was admired by teachers and peers alike for her academic achievements and vibrant personality. Her journey continued at Georgia College in Milledgeville, where she pursued undergraduate degrees with a focus that reflected her ambition and commitment to her goals. Tara's time at Georgia College was marked by academic excellence, participation in extracurricular activities, and the forging of lasting friendships. Her success and experiences during these years solidified her decision to pursue a career in law, a field where she aspired to make a significant difference. In the fall of 2000, Tara embarked on the next chapter of her life as a law student at the University of Georgia. She quickly distinguished herself as a hardworking and passionate student, respected by both her professors and classmates. Tara's future was filled with promise as she navigated the challenges of law school with the same dedication that had characterized her educational journey thus far. However, Tara's life took an unexpected and tragic turn on January 19, 2001. On that fateful day, the vibrant and determined young woman's promising journey was cut short, leaving her family, friends, and the University of Georgia community in shock and mourning. On the evening of January 18, 2001, Tara Baker was last seen by her friend around 7:30 p.m. at the University of Georgia Law School Library. Later that night, at approximately 9 p.m., Tara made a call to that same friend to ensure they had arrived home safely. During their conversation, she mentioned her plans to leave the library by 10 p.m. Unfortunately, this would be the last time anyone heard from her. The following morning, on January 19, 2001, firefighters from Athens, Clark County were called to a fire at Tara's apartment on 160 Fawn Drive in Athens, Georgia. As they battled the blaze, they made a devastating discovery: Tara's body. Investigation soon revealed that the fire had been deliberately set, a cruel act of arson intended to cover up a heinous crime that had ended the life of the young, promising law student. Tara's demise sent shockwaves through the University of Georgia and the surrounding community. The response from law enforcement was swift, launching an immediate and thorough investigation to uncover the circumstances surrounding her tragic demise. Detectives combed through evidence, interviewed potential witnesses, and followed numerous leads, all in an effort to bring the perpetrator to justice. Despite these extensive efforts, the investigation into Tara Baker's case soon hit an end. For 23 years, her case remained unresolved, a cold case that left her family, friends, and the community in a state of prolonged grief and uncertainty. The lack of closure and the relentless passage of time only deepened the anguish felt by those who loved her. Throughout these years, Tara's mother never relinquished her quest for justice. She kept her memory alive, persistently advocating for renewed interest and attention to her case. Tara's story became a symbol of a vibrant life cut tragically short and a call for justice that echoed through the community. The unresolved nature of Tara's case highlights the inherent challenges in slaying investigations. Advances in forensic science and investigative techniques offered new hope, yet the answers remained frustratingly out of reach. Nevertheless, the commitment to finding justice for Tara persisted, reflecting the enduring impact of her life and the collective desire for resolution. In June 2023, the Georgia General Assembly unanimously passed the Coleman-Baker Act. The act requires state and local law enforcement agencies to develop procedures to initiate a review of unsolved cases to determine if a full reinvestigation of the case could lead to new evidence or the identity of the perpetrator. The law further provides an avenue for families that disagree with the findings of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to have an administrative law judge review the case. It also required law enforcement to look into unsolved cases if more than 6 years had passed. The act is named for Rhonda Sue Coleman and Tara Louise Baker. In September 2023, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI's Cold Case Unit, joined forces with the Athens-Clarke County Police Department. They conducted an in-depth review and analysis of the ongoing investigation into Tara Baker's demise. This renewed effort was driven by advances in forensic technology and investigative techniques, coupled with a steadfast hope to finally bring closure to a case that had haunted the community for over 2 decades. The collaborative investigation aimed to re-examine every piece of evidence, scrutinize previous witness statements, and explore new leads. Detectives meticulously revisited the crime scene, re-interviewed individuals connected to the case, and employed cutting-edge forensic methods to uncover any overlooked details. This comprehensive approach was designed to piece together the puzzle that had eluded them for so long. Investigators were particularly hopeful that modern DNA analysis and other advanced forensic tools could shed new light on the case. Technologies that were unavailable or in their infancy at the time of Tara's demise were now being leveraged to re-examine evidence with fresh eyes and new capabilities. This included retesting biological samples, analyzing digital footprints, and utilizing enhanced crime scene reconstruction techniques. The partnership between the GBI and Athens-Clarke County Police Department was marked by a renewed sense of determination and collaboration. Both agencies were committed to leaving no stone unturned in their pursuit of justice for Tara. They understood that solving this case would not only bring solace to Tara's family and friends, but also reinforce the community's trust in their dedication and perseverance. Tara's family, having endured years of uncertainty and grief, expressed cautious optimism renewed investigation. They hoped that this joint effort would finally provide the answers they had been desperately seeking and bring the perpetrator to justice. The community, too, rallied behind the investigative teams, offering support and sharing any new information that might aid in solving the case. On Thursday, May 9, 2024, state and county investigators announced a significant breakthrough in the long-standing case of Tara Baker. Edric Lamont Faust, a 48-year-old man from Athens, was arrested and charged with multiple serious offenses in connection with Tara's demise. These charges included slaying, 2 counts of felony slaying, 1 count of aggravated assault, and concealing the demise of another. Also, arson, possession of a knife during the commission of a felony, tampering with evidence, and 1 count of aggravated sodomy. The arrest of Faust marked a pivotal moment in the investigation, bringing a renewed sense of hope and justice to Tara's family and the community. This breakthrough was made possible through the use of advanced DNA analysis and other biological evidence, which had not been available at the time of the original investigation. The sophisticated forensic techniques employed by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation's Cold Case Unit and the Athens-Clarke County Police Department provided the crucial link needed to identify and apprehend the suspect. Faust was promptly taken into custody and remains in jail on a $15,000 bond, as recorded by the Clarke County Sheriff's Office. Faust lived on Cooper Road in the same neighborhood off Lexington Road as Tara, who lived barely a block away on Fawn Drive in East Athens. According to Athens-Clarke County Clerk of Court records, Faust has a long criminal history. Faust has dozens of arrests documented in the Athens-Clarke County. Less than a month after Tara's demise, Faust was arrested and pleaded guilty to aggravated assault for cutting someone's neck. Faust was incarcerated between August 21, 1997 and July 20, 1999, as well as between May 1, 2001 and May 28, 2023. Faust's latest prior arrest was on March 3, 2022, when he was arrested for simple battery, disorderly conduct, and criminal trespass. He pleaded guilty on November 14, 2022. He was given 50 hours of community service and 12 months probation. The severity of the charges for Tara's case reflects the heinous nature of the crime that had shocked the community more than 2 decades ago. Faust allegedly used an instrument, when used offensively against a person, that results in strangulation. He is accused of stabbing Tara in the neck with a knife with a blade longer than 3 inches and striking her head with a blunt object. Additionally, the warrants say that Faust assaulted Tara during the attack, hid her body, and tried to destroy evidence by setting her apartment on fire. The arrest was a significant development for Tara's family, who had endured years of heartache and uncertainty. Jerry Salters, now chief of the Athens Clark County Police Department, who was an officer at the crime scene on January 19, 2001, said, "For many years I have hoped the Baker family would find justice for the loss of Tara. This is a case that has lived with me throughout my career at ACCPD. I remember being there during that horrific time. Seeing this case now full circle, I appreciate the hard work of the detectives from then and now. Knowing that the evidence collected at that time contributed to the arrest today gives me tremendous pride in all the officers who worked this case over the years." The news brought a mix of relief and sorrow for her family, as they were finally given a tangible step toward justice for Tara, even as they were reminded of the tragic loss they had suffered. Tara's mother, Virginia Baker, reflected on the past 23 years and who Tara would have become. She said, "Please think of our Tara sometimes and the remarkable person she would have become. Hers was a life so full of promise. I am so grateful. I want people to know that prayers work. Do not ever stop praying. Do not ever stop having hope in your heart, because it can happen." Tara's sister, Meredith Baker Schroeder, also addressed Faust's recent arrest. "The past few days have been filled with a host of convoluted emotions, as if it were 23 years ago. We grieve. We grieve for Tara. We grieve for those we lost along the way, still waiting for answers. We grieve for the new generation that never will truly understand how amazing their Aunt Tara was. And we grieve for the Faust family. While we understand that this is the first step of many, we are grateful for this day." The arrest of Edric Lamont Faust for Tara Louise Baker's case brings long-awaited justice to a case that has gripped her family and community for over 2 decades. The breakthrough offers hope and solace, honoring Tara's memory and reminding us of the enduring quest for justice. On November 2, 2015, Amy Vilardi walked in on her parents and elderly grandmothers in their 3-bedroom house, shocked to see blood everywhere. Amy found her mother, Kathy Taylor Scott, 60, her grandmother, Violet Taylor, 82, her stepfather, Mike Scott, 58, and Mike's mother, Barbara Scott, 80, slain in an exceptionally brutal manner. But who would harm the elderly this way? Especially considering nothing of value appeared to have been taken. No sign of breaking or entering. Nothing suspicious. Could it be someone they loved and trusted? Mike and Kathy lived in a trailer in Columbia, South Carolina, with their 2 mothers. They had dated in junior high, but fell out of contact. Love blossomed again when they ran into each other, and it was meant to be. They were the most caring people one could think of and looked out for their friends and family. Kathy, an outdoorsy person, loved being up and about. Her mother, Violet Taylor, trusted her with all her money, especially since her husband had passed and left her with some property. Mike's mother, Barbara Scott, was an active member of the church and took care of children in the nursery. She and Violet got along very well and chose to spend their days peacefully living together with their children. On the same property, Kathy's daughter, 32-year-old Amy, and her fiancé, Ross Vilardi, lived in a single wide trailer. Amy's daughter and son also lived with her and Ross. The two homes were less than 50 yards apart. Amy's mother and stepfather took care of her children, raising them as their own, from clothes to doctor appointments and even father-daughter dances at school. Mike and Kathy were very involved grandparents. Amy had a rebellious streak and several ex-husbands before getting involved with Ross Vilardi. Ross, 28 at the time, is described as a likable man. He was a Marine with specialized combat training for guarding embassies. He was given rewards for his service. In 2015, the church held a 4th of July celebration, and Mike and Kathy took Amy's children to attend. Upon returning home, they found Amy and Ross hosting friends and drinking. Mike and Kathy tried to take the children away from the situation, leading to a confrontation. Amy kept her children, insisting they were hers, and forbade the grandparents from seeing the children again. Amy and Ross were avid Facebook users, and their social media activity provided key insights into the deteriorating relationship between Amy and her parents. This was evident in various Facebook posts and messages exchanged between Amy, her parents, and other family members. These communications included arguments and accusations, contributing to the strained family dynamic. On July 9th, Amy publicly accused someone, implied to be Mike and Kathy, of lying. The next day, Mike's sister, Pam Isabel, privately urged Amy to stop airing their personal disputes online for the children's sake. Amy responded angrily, declaring she would not let Mike be a grandfather to her kids again. By July 16th, Mike and Kathy tried to reconcile with Amy, apologizing and wishing her well. Despite this, the feud continued, with Amy posting about emotional abuse and sharing videos of arguments with her family. A neighbor reported that Amy yelled at her parents, wishing they were not alive, and was generally hateful and disrespectful toward them, despite their relationship with her children. When Amy married Ross on October 24th, she did not invite her mother Kathy to the wedding due to the sour relationship. The week that Ross and Amy got married, Mike came home from work and knocked on their door. He apologized to Amy, explaining that not seeing the grandchildren was deeply affecting Kathy and Violet. Following this apology, Amy began visiting Mike and Kathy's house again. She promised them that when they picked up the children from Ross's parents' house the next weekend, they would be able to see them. The weekend of the tragedy, Amy's children were out of town at Ross's parents' house. After a couple of days of not seeing her family, Amy was immediately concerned. On November 2, 2015, Amy went to check on them. The lights were off, but she heard the television was on. She flipped on the lights and found only horror. She immediately dialed 911 at 12:30 p.m., asking them to come to their home on Refuge Road in Pendleton. The crime scene was incredibly bloody when the officers got there. They could only see gunshot wounds at first, the faces of the victims riddled with bullet holes. But then they saw that their throats had been slit all the way across. It was a unique crime because the perpetrator switched their weapons. The victims appeared to have been stabbed and then shot. There was evidence to suggest a massive struggle and no signs of forced entry. Investigators at the time believed that whoever took the lives of the victims had been let into the house. Investigators also noticed a shelf tipped forward in the main bedroom closet, suggesting that something heavy had been removed from it. The theory was that a safe containing cash had been stolen. Several people were aware that Mike Scott kept money in the house. This was common knowledge. Amy was seen as the grieving family member until officers came across $67,000 in cash when they searched Amy's trailer. The money was wrapped and separated by denomination, which was how Mike Scott kept his money. The couple claimed the money was savings plus profit from their dog grooming business, but that did not seem plausible. The detectives found an unopened bucket of Halloween candy near the door. The detectives then assumed that the family was likely slain on October 31st. A table with toys had been set up in the living room, indicating Mike and Kathy were expecting a visit from Amy's kids, who had been kept away for months. Amy and Ross were nearby in their trailer with her children out of town, but it appeared the grandparents were expecting the children to visit. Why? There were defensive wounds on each victim's hands, confirming that they fought back against their attacker. Mike was found face down in the living room in a large pool of blood, suggesting he bled out there. There were 6 large cuts to the left side of his neck, each from a long knife blade. Additionally, he had a gunshot wound behind his left ear. In the living room, the 2 elderly women lay side by side, Violet Taylor on the outside and Barbara Scott on the inside. Violet suffered a near decapitation, with a wound stretching almost completely across her neck. She also had 2 gunshot wounds to her head and defensive wounds on her left hand, a testament to her fighting spirit. Barbara Scott had the most injuries of all, with approximately 6 stab wounds to her neck, chest, and left shoulder, and a close-range gunshot wound behind her right ear. The severity of the knife wounds to Barbara and Violet was particularly distressing, considering their age and vulnerability. Kathy Scott was found in the bedroom, stabbed in the right lung through a major blood vessel, causing significant internal bleeding. The wound was 9¼ inches deep and had a rectangular bruise consistent with a combat-type knife with a hilt or guard. She also had 2 gunshot wounds. It also appears that she was reaching for a gun before falling over a backpack and a pillow. The area where she was found explained what happened. Footprints were leading up to the hallway on the carpet. She was likely stabbed and fled to the bedroom where she got shot. Police had reason to believe that there were at least 2 assailants, considering the multiple methods of slaying and the footprints found on the crime scene. Another interesting thing was that Mike Scott had sent a picture of money to his friend, showing off his savings that he kept in the house. That money was missing. This picture was dated October 29th. This cash, later found in Amy and Ross's trailer, matched the serial numbers of the money in the picture, further implicating them in the crime. Amy behaved suspiciously during the funeral. While everyone was crying and upset, she was wearing red with an icy demeanor. When Violet's niece came to pay her respects, Amy met her with a stony sentence: "I did not do it." Right after the funeral, she cleared out the entire house, getting rid of all the bloody carpets and all the evidence. But the couple came under scrutiny only 3 years later in 2018. Amy filed to get all the evidence gathered from the house back. This included vehicles and firearms as well as money. That is when she got on the investigators' radar. Her behavior was suspicious, and her spending more so. Police had to build circumstantial evidence, and in order to do that, they had to go over the couple's financial records. The main chunk of money came from Ross's disability check, as he was discharged from the Marines in 2013, which was $25,000. They had $17,000 from their dog grooming business, Styles for Miles, and a $5,000 income tax refund. In 2013, Ross bought a $14,000 truck, followed by a $5,800 Mustang. He also purchased 2 Harley-Davidsons for $15,000, totaling $35,000 in expenditures. However, his disability settlement was only $25,000, creating a deficit of $10,000. There were messages indicating that the couple had trouble meeting rent in 2015, as they had only $40 in their business account. Next, it was noted that they had to pay $7,000 on the 1st of November 2015. Surprisingly, they had the money a few days after tragedy struck their home. Their business, Styles for Miles, generated $2,700 in 2014 and approximately $27,000 in 2015. Despite these earnings, their spending far exceeded their legitimate income. Hannah Taylor, Amy's cousin and former employee at the Pendleton-based business, said the couple had been experiencing financial troubles. It was so bad, Hannah claimed, that her paychecks regularly came up short. Every morning I got there, I would check the voicemails, check the phone calls, and there were bill collectors calling and leaving voicemails like you would not believe. Hannah was fired from Styles for Miles just a month or two before the slayings, after she confronted them about not being paid for her work. She also claimed she saw a large military-style knife in Amy's vehicle, which drew suspicion, since it was believed that whoever took the life of the victims used a military knife. On September 4, 2015, Ross sent his wife a text stating, "Honey, please do not spend any more money. We only have $40 left in the business account." In an October 15, 2015 text from Amy to Ross, Amy stated that people were at the shop raising hell about the rent. Ross responded, "What would you like me to say to them, babe? I mean, at the moment, we do not have the money." Another Styles for Miles employee, Roxy Voorhees, said Amy was the decision-maker in her relationship with Ross. Amy had a deep-seated hatred for her mother because Kathy took her biological father off life support following a tragic incident when he was crushed by a car. As they went through cell phone records, it appeared that the couple's phones pinged within the vicinity of their home on Halloween night. Another important piece of evidence was that the shoe prints found on the scene matched a pair of red Asics shoes that Ross was seen wearing on CCTV footage. The shoes Ross was wearing and that particular hoodie were never recovered. There is more. There were messages that contradicted the couple's story about being out and then going to bed at 9. Text messages placed them in the vicinity around 8:36 p.m., and they were seen at a store after 9:38 p.m. Detectives decided to interview them separately, with Amy refusing to cooperate. Ross forgot that he and Amy had told the officers they were home that night in bed by 9. It was evident that the couple was lying, especially considering the inconsistencies in their stories. Poring over the evidence, which included financial and cell phone records, the shoe prints at the crime scene, the conflicting statements, their volatile relationships with the victims, and some of Mike's cash found in the Vilardi trailer, investigators believed they had enough to present the case to the Attorney General. Amy and Ross Vilardi were finally arrested in December of 2023, over 8 years after the gruesome events of Halloween 2015. They are being held as they await trial, Their application for bond denied on February 16, 2024. Prosecutor Heather Weiss said, "The one person who stood to truly benefit from their demise is Amy Vilardi." She said Amy quickly cleaned up the crime scene and moved her family into the home. Investigators do not know what Amy did with the money she received as inheritance. Mike Scott's sister, Pam Isabella, is grateful for finally getting justice after losing her mother and brother so violently. Amy and Ross, the bloodthirsty lovers, let their greed and hatred blind them. They had a loving, supportive family that let them live rent-free and supported them in any way possible. They lost everything: love, support, family, and even the money they wanted. Perhaps if they had continued to live their lives, things would have turned out to be fine. And they almost got away with it, forgetting that the truth comes out eventually. When Kelle Ann Workman was found, everyone knew who the perpetrators were, yet no one came forward or dared to implicate the thugs involved until 35 years later. Kelle Ann Workman was born to farmer parents Stanley and Joan Workman in 1965. They were residents of Seymour, Douglas County, Missouri. Stanley worked at Dayco Corporate for 19 years, but he truly enjoyed farming and caring for his dairy herd. Kelle had two siblings, Pam Workman and Mark Workman. Her baby brother Ames, Matthew Workman, passed away when he was an infant. She had blonde hair and green eyes and was a well-reserved, quiet girl who lived with her parents. Kelle often did house and yard work for people in the Dogwood area. She mowed the grass at the Dogwood Cemetery for about 3 years. It was not unusual for a young woman to be a cemetery caretaker in this area, and it was not unusual for her to work into the evening. The cemetery did not scare her. But it would become a nightmare for her family when, while working late into the evening, Kelle simply disappeared on June 30th, 1989. At first, her parents believed she was running a little late. But as dinner time approached and there was still no sign of Kelle, her parents grew increasingly anxious. It was unlike their daughter to be out so late without any notice. Kelly's cousin, Shayna Beebe, vividly remembers the day Joan Workman rushed to their home in a panic, telling Kelly's father and uncle that she was missing. It was an emotional and frantic moment that set the tone for the days that followed. Friends and family gathered, forming search parties and holding on to hope with every passing hour. Their worry deepened into fear, prompting them to contact the police. A wide search ensued, spreading through Douglas County. The last confirmed sighting of Kelle was at 5:40 p.m., when she was mowing the grass at the Dogwood Cemetery in Douglas County. This is near the Southern Baptist Church where she worked. It was right at Highway 14 and Z. Her uncle could see her hard at work. However, around 6:15 he could not see her anymore, so she either left or was taken between those times. At that time, Pam Workman, Kelle's sister, was living in Kansas City, Missouri, about 200 miles away. The 22-year-old was living her life. She could not even imagine the tragedy that would strike her family. On July 1st, a knock at Pam's apartment door interrupted her morning routine. Standing there were her aunt and uncle, their faces etched with worry. They delivered the news that Kelle was missing, a revelation that would forever alter Pam's life. The drive back to Douglas County, although not extraordinarily long, felt endless to Pam. Each mile was a painful reminder of her sister's absence and the uncertainty that loomed over the family. For days, the Workman family huddled together, praying and wondering where Kelle was. The most confusing thing was the fact that Kelle's keys were in the car's ignition, and only 2/3 of the grass had been cut. The lawnmower was fully gassed but turned off. The detectives deduced she was interrupted and not to be robbed. She was possibly kidnapped. When Kelle was finally found, the relief was overshadowed by heartbreak. Unfortunately for her family, 24-year-old Kelle's body was discovered a week after her abduction. Her body was submerged in a creek in the Mark Twain National Forest near Oldfield, more than 10 miles from where she was last seen. The discovery was particularly harrowing for two of Kelle's uncles, who were present at the scene. Due to the rapid decomposition of her body, authorities were unable to determine the exact cause of her demise. They found no evidence of head injury or bullet wounds after x-raying her. They believed she had likely lost her life on the night of June 30th or July 1st. Pam often felt that her sister's case was not given the priority it deserved. This sense of neglect only added to her sorrow and frustration. However, hope persisted. Pam clung to the belief that one day justice would be served, not only for Kelle, but for all families enduring the agony of a cold case. Pam strongly believed Kelle Ann was a victim of knowing too much. She worked at Dogwood's store some days, and she possibly heard something she should not have. Something about illegal substances or money. The perpetrator felt the need to silence her, which gives motive as well. While Pam believes there was not much the police did, investigators had another problem. They had 3 suspects, but they had no way of charging them. They were interrogated, but they had alibis. On July 10, 1989, law enforcement authorities admitted during a meeting that they had no physical leads in this case. The meeting included representatives from the Christian County and Douglas County Sheriff's Departments, as well as officials from Springfield and Willow Springs of the Missouri State Highway Patrol. Even with all their resources combined, they simply lacked evidence. The Workmans publicly urged people to do something and begged witnesses to come forward if they knew anything at all. They offered a $10,000 reward on July 13, 1989. They had initially offered it when Kelle went missing, but now they asked people to come forward with information regarding her tragic fate. By October 20th, 4 months into the investigation, the Douglas County Sheriff admitted there was no significant progress. The department continued its investigation by eliminating suspects, circumstances, and evidence. They had nothing on the case. The Workmans found hope when they had a small breakthrough. Kelle's mother, Joan Workman, was randomly going through the events of the day with family members on 30th December 1989. Another family, one of their friends, gave her an important piece of information that they withheld or forgot about. 4 days after Kelle's abduction, someone called their friends at their residence and said they had seen a man at the Workman's house on the afternoon Kelle disappeared. The person did not name themselves or the intruder, which was unfortunate, but it meant that someone saw something. This was an exciting development. This person never contacted law enforcement because they were under duress and being threatened. Joan strongly believed Kelle would have fought back if the perpetrator was a stranger, so this was probably someone she knew well. But quickly, the months turned into a year. The sheriff's office released yet another statement. They were confident that Kelle's case would get solved because someone was out there with some crucial piece of information. The main suspects were the town's infamous Banks brothers, Leonard Dwight Banks and Bobby Lee Banks. In August 1990, a polygraph test was administered to Bobby Lee Banks, as requested by the Missouri State Highway Patrol. Not surprisingly, he failed the test, which his attorney claimed was due to weak emotions. There was a lot of publicity, and their attorney at the time said they should refrain from making a public statement. His brother, Dwight Banks, was also asked by the police to take a polygraph test. The brothers were Seymour residents and had been spotted in the area. Dwight agreed to the polygraph test, where the examiner asked him 3 main questions. Firstly, did he take the life of Kelle Ann Workman? Then, does he know who took her life? And lastly, was he under the influence of illegal substances? Dwight answered no to all the questions, and the examiner found him to be telling the truth, unlike his brother. Police also found out that a young man was seen in the cemetery the day Kelle disappeared. This man's truck was found burned later during the day. It is highly likely this man was involved, and his accomplices burnt the truck and threatened him. Things stayed quiet for a while. 2 years later, in October 1992, an elderly person phoned Joan and gave her the name of a woman. This person believed the woman and her illegal substance dealer boyfriend were involved in Kelle Ann's demise. The identity of the caller was never found, and this apparent lead was useless, as the woman and her boyfriend had alibis. But in the meantime, Dwight's ex-girlfriend came forward to say he had asked her to be an alibi for her the night Kelle Ann lost her life. 6 years after the discovery of Kelle Ann Workman's decomposed body, authorities remained without significant leads. Christian County Sheriff Steve Whitney reported that a grand jury investigation had yielded no results. Kelle's father, Stanley Workman, believed multiple individuals were involved in her abduction and slaying, but lacked proof. By mid-July 1995, a new lead emerged, prompting renewed investigative efforts. Sheriff Whitney indicated he had suspects, but refrained from disclosing details. Confident he knew the assailant's identity, Whitney emphasized the challenge of building a solid case. Investigations continued with another promising lead, and by July 1996, Bobby and Dwight Banks were identified as suspects in Kelle's slaying. Dwight Banks had confessed that he and his brother Bobby saw Kelle a few hours before she was taken, when she was working at the dogwood store. But he said he and his brother had nothing to do with her tragedy or kidnapping. In fact, when she had disappeared, he and Bob were at his house eating fried chicken. Investigators had reason to believe that Dwight had taken illegal substances, such as relaxants or Valium, in order to pass the polygraph test that his brother failed. While all this development happened in Kelle's case, on 16 July 1996, a bomb was found at the Workman house. Officers from the 2 counties, policemen, and the bomb squad from Jefferson City defused the bomb. The bomb was found on the hood of Joan's car. It had some threatening inscription on it and was discovered at 5:30 a.m. By midday, when the squad detonated the timer on the bomb, they found no explosive materials. It was simply meant to scare the family. Rita Sanders, a 17-year veteran of law enforcement, believed she knew the men responsible for Kelle Ann Workman's end. 2 of them were from Seymour, and a third from rural Fordland who helped dispose of the body. She noted that 2 suspects were seen near the crime scene shortly before Kelle disappeared. Despite believing the case was solved, Rita doubted they would be brought to justice due to manhandled evidence and the passage of time. Interestingly, Rita was fired from the force that year. Rita told the Workmans that a witness saw Kelle being forcibly taken into a pickup while she fought bravely for her life. Things picked up momentum when a man from Ava came forward, confessing to the crime in December 1998. He also implicated 2 other men, but still no arrests were made. This was Wiley Belt, a witness and an accomplice. On June 9, 1999, DNA testing warrants were served to Seymour's Dwight Banks and Fordland's Wiley Belt in connection with Kelle Ann Workman's end, but lab results were never released, and neither man was arrested or charged. Wiley Belt revealed in an interview that he was not afraid of the testing and that he did not know the Banks brothers. He said someone must have spotted him at the dogwood store because he saw Kelle there that day. And so the case was buried for decades. There were no new leads. Some of the involved officers retired, while photographic evidence was lost. On one occasion, Kelly's sister Pam ran into Dwight Banks while grocery shopping. It was an unpleasant experience, and he wanted to start an altercation with her. Investigators Leslie Albrecht and Christopher Holland were assigned to Kelle Ann Workman's case in 2021. It has always been considered to be an open case. At the time, the two worked for the Department of Health and Senior Services Bureau of Special Investigations. They were assigned to elder abuse and dependent adult abuse caseloads in southwest Missouri. It was not until their second year of investigating that Albrecht and Holland met with the eyewitnesses. They ended up providing crucial information that solidified the case against the Bank brothers and Belt. Within a few months of this revelation, the indictment came. But Stanley Workman passed away on September 11, 2022, without living to see the perpetrators behind bars. On February 20, 2024, a Douglas County grand jury indicted 65-year-old Bobby Banks of Seymour and 64-year-old Leonard Dwight Banks of Gainesville. Also 64-year-old Wiley Belt of Ava for the 1989 slaying, assault, and kidnapping of Kelle Ann Workman. The men were held at the Douglas County Jail on a $250,000 cash bond each. All three men pleaded not guilty at their arraignments. Lawyers tried to get something of a leniency from the court, with Dwight Banks struggling with pancreatic cancer and diabetes. All three charges are in the first degree, meaning each carries the possibility of life in prison.